So we talked about the glide path on my answer on the 1.5. There's a couple of those
Back with
in
the
this that could probably take us through the show here.
yeah.
Uh, I'll start. I'll read row 4. Hi, Alex. You're awesome. Thank you for the show. No, it's
You guys are awesome, not just you.
Hi, yeah. Hi, Wade and Alex. You guys are awesome. Thank you for the show. I have a question about how to implement rising equity glide path and value-based equity glide path for someone who is 1 to 2 years from retirement, especially on the timing part. If my retirement asset allocation is 75% equity and 25% fixed income, what would be the expected allocation on day one of retirement? And the only caveat, Wade and I were looking at this one. We're going to assume by values based, you mean like a value tilt versus like a growth tilt, as opposed to values based investing, like socially responsible and all of that. I'm not 100% certain, but I think that's what you mean.
Yeah, I think that the term value-based asset allocation is not your moral values, but your
Well, usually
market
because you hear
value.
value tilt when it's done like as a value stock, right? Not value based, but that's fine. That could be just an internal lexicon for us.
Yeah, and so to, to answer the question, so there's no, just like there's no answer, what should your asset allocation be? There's no answer on how far should you tilt away from your, in this case, strategic allocation of 75% equities. When Michael Kitces and I did that original research about this, our case study was you're generally comparing, you're going to be 60-40 eventually. That's 60% equity, 40% bonds. You dipped down to 30% equities at retirement, and then you worked your way back up to 60% equities. But that wasn't any sort of optimized answer. That was just a case study example. There really is no optimized answer. If you want to go down 10%, 20%, 30%, you'd be looking at, if ultimately you want to be 75% equities, you may not necessarily ultimately go below 50% equities in that scenario. But the idea is figure out something to work your way down to before you work your way back up post-retirement. 50%, 45%, 65%. We really can't give you a precise answer, but it is a way to help manage that sequence of returns risk around the retirement date.
Yeah, I did mine when I went through the other question. Okay, here's another glide path one. Thanks for the show. I've learned a lot. I have a question regarding asset allocation across taxable, tax deferred, and tax exempt. Oh, I don't think this is glide path. Hang on. Give me
No,
one
it's not a
second.
glide path.
No, it's
The
not a
other,
glide.
where's the other glide path one? There was another glide path one somewhere on the list.
That included RSUs, I believe, right?
Oh, maybe that was it.
Yeah. Give me one second here.
Actually, there's a few more glide path adjacent questions, but I don't know if we want to hit all of those right now.
Like new one?
For a future episode.
Okay, that's fine.
There's another.
I think that is pretty much glide path done. I was wrong. We'll do asset location soon, but here's a one-off question. Maureen is listening live. Do index funds decline as an average of stocks in the index they follow? I don't quite understand.
Yeah. And yes, the decline or hopefully increase on average. But yes, you look at all the stocks held. Now they're not just in equal proportions. Usually, it's the larger companies have a greater share of the index. But yes, the overall daily performance of the index fund would reflect the weighted average of the proportion of each stock in the index and its performance.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, Maureen, there's a couple of, let me expand upon that because there's a lot of stuff out there that you hear in the media and the like, and I just want to make sure you pick up on the nuances. I think people by default say index funds now for anything that's sort of passively managed, if you will, but there's many different flavors of this. and Wade alluded to it earlier. Yeah, they're going to decline as an average of the stocks in the index they follow.
or
A couple of
increase.
caveats. He had said, say it again, Wade, I'm sorry.
I mean, or increase. It's just the
Yeah,
assumption
yeah,
that
or
they'll
increase.
go
Yeah,
a
yeah.
decline.
Let's be an
Hopefully,
optimist.
on
Half full.
average, they don't
Yeah,
decline.
yeah, yeah. And so what Wade is when Wade said equal weighted or market cap weighted. So S&P 500, right? This is where the top stocks have a disproportionate, not dis, they have, yeah, they have a disproportionate weighting in the index relative to the smaller stocks. Because if Facebook, that's worth whatever it's worth, $1 trillion, versus another company that's worth $80 billion, if they go down one percentage point each, it's not gonna have the same impact. The smaller one is not gonna have the same impact in the total decline for that day. It's market cap weighted. Now, what you do see a lot, and it's been being pitched as this sort of great discovery, are these equal weighted index, because they'll come back and say, hey, look, we don't want Meta, we don't want the Alphabet to have this disproportionate influence on the index. We want to just get the average, treat everyone the same, treat
And that's how
everyone
the
as
Dow Jones works.
well. That was price weighted. It's
Oh
slight,
yeah, yeah.
it's a slight variation, Aha. No, no, no. That's Dow Jones is completely idiotic the way that one's done. But that's for another day. If you're ever listening to the news, just ignore the Dow Jones. But it's true, right? And no one uses that professionally. So then, going back to the equal weighted index, what's happening is every stock has the same influence on the index going up or down. That's not necessarily a good thing. What you're doing there implicitly is you're taking size bets. You're taking small size bets, and you're taking value bets. Unknowingly. Yes, they may perform better, but it's not because of the equal weighting. What's happening is you're just getting exposure to value and size, which have greater premiums in the market over time. You're just doing it in a very messy way. You're doing it in a way that internal fund that's equal weighted is going to be full of transaction costs that you never want. And at the end of the day, you have to sort stocks on something. It wouldn't make sense for you to sort stocks in an index just based on the alphabet. Well, that's kind of what you're doing when you're equally weighting things. Price does matter in things. And so the market cap index is the way to go. If you want value exposure and size exposure, buy those indices. But I would avoid these equal weighted indices. I think that's more of a market. Not I think that's just a marketing gimmick to sort of sell something. And you see that all the time on CNBC where they're shilling those things, and it shouldn't be done. And I don't know if they know better, but it just shouldn't be done from that standpoint. But to answer your question, yes, a market cap weighted index, yes, it will follow the average just based on their weightings, whether they go up or down.
And more broadly, that's true for any mutual fund.
Yeah.
The mutual fund's daily performance is based on the actual performance of all its underlying holdings, averaged together to get the overall amount of assets and then the overall growth or decline for the day across them all.
So there it is. Wait, how many papers have you published, more or less?
I just had to count this up for a CE thing. It was 66 peer-reviewed.
Okay. So on average, Wade and I have published 30 articles each.
There you go.
Right? Doesn't make any sense, right? Well, that's your equal weighted index. How's that one? Is that a good example?
That's about the average depth of the river is 2 inches, but you can still drown because there's a hole.
Yeah. Never cross a river that's on average 3 feet deep. That's an old stats thing. All right. So let's talk about the tax location here. We got a couple of those questions. Let me start it off by reading it. I'll listen to you, and then I'll see what can be added to it. Hi, Alex and Wade. Thanks for the show. I've learned a lot. I have a question regarding asset allocation across taxable, tax-deferred, and tax-exempt accounts. taxable being, the normal accounts that you would do on an after tax basis, like individual accounts. Tax deferred, those are like IRAs and 401ks, 403b, those kind of things. Tax exempt, Roth IRA, right? So I plan to live off my taxable account for 12 years after retirement. So they're going to tap into that first, it seems. The asset allocation that I have in mind for the taxable account is 70-30 equity to T-bills, using a rising equity glide path or value-based glide path approach. Is this a good plan? For the tax-deferred and tax-exempt accounts, can I have a more aggressive asset allocation like 100% equity? My RISA profile is total return, and I only use low-cost indexing mutual funds and indexing funds. Take it away, boss.
Yeah, so this question, right, you got to make some compromises in real life. So let me quickly mention the general asset location guidelines, but then talk about how that gets complicated when you then overlay distributions in retirement. So the general guidance about asset location is in your taxable account, you want tax efficient assets. So that's generally stocks are more tax efficient than bonds because part of their returns are the long-term capital gains. And then you only have to pay when you sell, you only have to pay on the gains when you sell them. Bonds are tax inefficient because everything comes out as ordinary income, interest payments. No, I guess not everything. If there could have capital gains, but usually it's a big chunk of that is interest income, which is ordinary income taxed on an annual basis. So the guideline is you put your bonds or your other tax inefficient asset classes in the tax deferred account. You put your stock index funds that are the most tax efficient in the taxable brokerage account. And then for the Roth, this is going to also be more growth oriented assets. If you have less tax efficient growth oriented assets, like if you have an emerging market index fund or if you have a small cap value index fund where the long-term expected growth rate is higher, but they are less tax efficient, that sort of thing can go in the Roth. And again, the bonds and the tax deferred, and then the tax efficient stock index funds in the taxable brokerage account. That's the general guidelines. Now that gets, the complication is then if you're following a conventional wisdom withdrawal ordering sequence, and or even if you're doing tax efficient Roth conversions and things, it's going to have the same problem. You spend your taxable account first, and you're doing, while the taxable account remains, you're doing Roth conversions as well, but you spend on the taxable account first. If you have a lot of stock index funds in your taxable account and your tax deferred account is filled with bonds, that might give you a declining equity glide path as you go in through those early retirement years. And that's not really what you want to do. So you have to create some sort of compromise. And that's what this question's ultimately getting at, is trying to strike some sort of compromise there, putting T-bills into the taxable brokerage account, maybe because they have a lower interest payment, so they are relatively more tax efficient than other kinds of bonds. And as a way to then, when I do this withdrawal order sequencing, I'm also selling some bond or some T-bills in this case to pay expenses in those early retirement years. And that's more my cash bucket in my brokerage account because I'm going to spend it in those early retirement years. So of course, I can't fully assess the whole case study in terms of if this is the best approach for the individual to take, but at least it does touch on trying to find a reasonable compromise between asset location and the reality of withdrawal order sequencing overlaid on top of the asset location.
All right. Let me see if there's another one that was interested, or let me take on this question, and then we can continue with the one below. Give me 1 second, Wade. I'm just trying to organize for those listening in. I'm just trying to make sure we're curating this properly. Give me 1 second. All right. So that one's for the glide path. Anyone of similar ilk? Questions that we have there?
Well, there's more tax efficiency questions. There's more glide path questions. I guess we can.
Okay, this looks like a one-off one. Uh, Hi, Alex and Wade. My financial advisor recommended that I convert my Vanguard Growth Indexing Mutual Fund to its equivalent ETF for better tax efficiency. The conversion doesn't incur capital gains or losses. But after comparing the fees, the mutual fund is 1 basis point higher than the ETF and yearly dividend distributions. Mutual fund is one blah, 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 blah. I don't see a big benefit for doing this. Is there any real benefit for doing it? Thank you. I don't know. If I'm being completely, in Canada, all I am, right, is candid here. I don't like the Vanguard Growth Index Fund, or I naturally don't like large growth as an asset class. There's no necessarily long-term premium for investing in growth stocks. You pay for that privilege through lower returns. Now you could have areas, the four horsemen. You could have time periods that are sustainable where they've outperformed, but strategically, that's not an asset class that I like very much. I think advisors or individuals do that simply because, hey, let's cover all of our bases. But if you look at long-term returns and sources of return from the stock market, the growth asset class isn't one of them. If you're going to do that, you might as well put it in like the S&P or some sort of total market. So at that I have trouble. So again, I'm not a big fan of that to begin with. The fact that your advisor doesn't know that is probably more of a concern for me, whether it's go to the Grand Vanguard Growth or the equivalent ETF. Now, I would also ask if I have a client and the client is saying, hey, I don't know if this is nitpicky or not, to be honest with you, and I'm trying to be respectful, but you may not be ready for an advisor, frankly, if you're looking at it and thinking, oh, this is 1 basis point higher and I don't want to do that and this and that. That would be a headache for me as an advisor, not because I don't want the client asking questions, but it just strikes me as like, is this person going to like be like this all the time? And that's a hassle for me, as opposed to from a big picture standpoint. Just the fact that you have a growth index fund would be enough for me to say, look, we don't need that. Let's go elsewhere. Does it matter switching? Probably not. Would be my point. But my larger question is, why have that to begin with? Wait.
Yeah, this may be a collaborator, but it seems to have answered a lot of the side questions.
Sorry. Yeah, but they're collaborating about the wrong thing.
Or they weren't. Or you were answering things that were not asked. No one cared what your opinion was on.
Okay, all right, fair enough. That's fair. The
point was, that you convert your mutual funds to their equivalent ETFs for better tax efficiency. The fee part, there's only a 1 basis point difference. I think, and it's generally not a big deal either way. I tend to just go with whatever is available. But I guess if I have a choice between ETFs and mutual funds, I do pick the ETF options. I don't know if there's any real strong reason.
ETFs tend to be more tax efficient, but maybe this Vanguard fund in particular has some quirk that makes it uber tax efficient that I don't know about offhand. Sometimes you see that with DFA where it's almost equivalent as the ETF. But you can make the case, the trading, daily trading, maybe, money needs to be extremely liquid. ETF could be a little better. It's one of those things that it's not a problem until it is. But I'm not too familiar with the mechanics.
If you have any sort of behavioral biases that lead you to watch the price as it fluctuates during the day and that sort of thing, mutual funds can be the better protection because they're only priced a couple hours after the market closes and you can't track their movements during the day. So you just waste less time and effort. But if you ignore the daily fluctuations anyway, then that's not an issue.
Okay. But you're right. No one asked me my opinion on the I found an opening, Wade. I found an opening. I made my own. All right. Let's see here.
You may have asked a question, but I'm going to answer a completely different
Let me tell you what I think. All right, why don't I do this one? Since this is an interesting one, and it takes us off the glide path and all of that. You want to do that tax planning one about the software?
Yeah, we could do that one.
Because it's a one-off, and that could be a 10-minute answer. If you give it its proper treatment. So I'm counting on you, Wade, to see if we can take us home here. In April 2023, very precise, our readers, T. Rowe Price acquired Retiree Inc., a firm led by William Meyer and William Reichenstein that offered innovative retirement planning software to create smart withdrawal strategies for retirement. Are there any comparable withdrawal strategy software packages that are available to individual retirees for purchase without being a client of T. Rowe Price or another investment advisor? I laughed when I read this, not because of the question. The question is a great question. It's a good question. But Wade and one of the Williams, to be named later, have had back and forths on tax philosophies, right, Wade?
No, it wasn't even that. No, I agree with them on the tax philosophies. It was more,
He caught you on something that he wasn't right on. I forget.
yeah, everyone's just calls it tax bracket management, but even though that's not what we're talking about, because we're talking about Social Security and Medicare surcharges, but he was just hammering, oh, they call it tax bracket management. That means they don't know what they're talking about. That sort of, it's a kind of a non-issue that became an issue. But yeah, we'll answer different questions. So are there any comparable withdrawal strategy softwares available to individuals who are not working with an advisor? And I recently started doing a deeper dive into different software. So one thing, that Covisum, that's Joel Sasser at Covisum. He developed tax planning software for advisors. That's kind of the caveat here. You can't really get it direct as a consumer unless you're willing to pay for the advisor license, which may not be cost efficient. But it does a great job with the tax planning. So any advisor using that can be a great resource. I started looking into some of the consumer facing tools and was a little bit surprised that at least the tools I looked at did not approach this sort of philosophy of tax planning in a very effective manner. Now, the one I haven't dug deep into is Maxify. So I know that's popular with folks. I don't know Maxify. I would hope Maxify does it right, but I did not have experience with, if you name what are the other planning softwares that consumers like to use, I was not impressed by how they do their Roth conversions. The problem is, so you've got the conventional wisdom, which is you spend taxable, then tax deferred, then tax exempt. And then the question is, should you do Roth conversions on top of that? And two of the softwares I looked at, they just overlaid the Roth conversions on top of the conventional wisdom, which made Roth conversions really inefficient because it just sped up the process of having only a Roth account left. And it's really tax inefficient to have only a Roth account if you don't have other taxable income sources, because you don't even get to take advantage of your standard deduction. So these other software programs, they didn't really recommend doing Roth conversions because you got no benefit out of it. What software has to do this correctly is not managing some sort of tax rate just to determine if you should do a Roth conversion. But then once your taxable account is depleted, it also has to continue to manage that tax rate to decide how much comes out of your IRA in excess of RMDs. And then the rest of the spending comes from the Roth. And that's where I have not, to answer the specific question, is there consumer-facing software that will do this right? I have not seen it. Maxify may be an exception, but otherwise, the main packages you can name, I was not impressed with this. They did not blend the distributions from the tax-deferred and the tax-exempt accounts after the taxable account was depleted. And that leads them to make really uninformed type of answers about how you should do a Roth conversion strategy. So unfortunately, the answer to this question is no, there's not really any comparable software packages available to individuals without being a client of a planning firm.
Yeah, now you could ask, what about this one? What about that one? And we've looked at the Wade has looked at the top ones. I know he has. We don't want to go into it because we
Yeah,
know
I don't
them
know
as
if I should
well.
name
And
them by name, but
yeah, we don't want to get
the
into
Magnify I have not looked at, but the
yeah,
other ones you might name, I probably have looked at.
yeah. And the other piece, just because the question you could be thinking is, why is that? And then it just becomes just a practical issue. Look, it probably costs to create a software in earnest with the securities and this and that and everything that's needed. You're looking at multiple millions of dollars, even though there's no code environment and all that kind of stuff. Look, the reality is it's going to cost you into the millions. And there's just, believe it or not, there's not a lot of market for do-it-yourselfers with this particular question. There's just not enough to justify that cost if they're doing that. That's why there's a lot of like Monte Carlo things that consumers can use and over that's easier to do. But these cost more money and they can't recoup their costs in a manner that will merit the investment into it. That's why they usually go right to advisors for this, because there is a market for advisors for this that will make it quick. Because if you create a software like this for consumers, the Q&As and the help desk will
Yeah,
just
the
be
support.
the support will be out of control, and so you just don't see it for that very reason. Now, again, this is where the person asking this question, you may be better off just going to an advisor and doing a one-time financial plan that's specific into this, that's specific to this, and relative to the cost and the advice that they're providing, from a tax perspective, this if it's going to set you the right way to withdraw efficiently and manage your taxes, it's probably going to be well worth the cost as a one-time endeavor, as opposed to trying to recreate an Excel, risk getting it wrong and the like, and spending 300 hours, 400 hours when you really get down to it on creating it. You don't see it in consumers. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon because of the investment needed to build it and to support it. And so you're probably better off just looking at a one-time tax plan from an advisory firm. Honestly, and I'm trying to pitch anyone. I just think that's just probably the cheapest way to do it. Wait.
Yeah, it's hard to provide this really detailed tax planning software directly to the end consumer. So at some point, hopefully we'll see new developments, but right now it's kind of unfortunate that there is no good answer to provide here.
Yeah.
And on that dour note.
Well, let me see. Do we have a quick one? Let me see here. Oh, you want to knock out that HSA one about 20 employees?
Okay.
And we'll end on that one, so it's on an up note.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
All right.
Okay. If you work for an employer with greater than 20 employees, can you wait to apply for Medicare after age 65 so you can keep contributing to your HSA account? And well, double check with your HR department. But yeah, generally that's the 20 employee, actively employed, you or your spouse actively employed at a firm with at least 20 employees. That health coverage from that employment, it's not just I'm employed at firm A, but I still have a health plan through firm B. That doesn't work. You're getting your health insurance through this employer. They have more than 20 employees. Double check with HR, but generally speaking, the answer is yes. You do not have to apply for Medicare when you reach age 65. That employer plan can remain as primary coverage. Now, the quirk on this is as soon as you sign up for Medicare, you can't contribute to the HSA anymore. And it's even retroactive. You can sign up for the previous 6 months. So if I'm already past age 60, not pre-age 65, but if I'm 65 in 6 months and I sign up for Medicare, my Medicare will be active since I turned 65 for those previous 6 months. I cannot make any contribution to an HSA once I'm in Medicare. And Part A for most Americans, if you're going to get a Social Security benefit, you don't have to pay any premiums for Part A for the hospital insurance. So a lot of times, even if you are actively employed and have employer-based coverage, you still want to sign up for Medicare Part A just because it's a backstop, could provide some additional benefits with a hospital stay and so forth. The downside, though, is just you can't contribute to an HSA at that point. So you have to be careful to make clear you do not want to sign up for Medicare Part A or Part B because you want to continue to contribute to an HSA, and then you should stop making contributions to the HSA once you're within 6 months subsequently of signing up for Medicare.
And that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you so much. Wade and I are going to hit the push-ups and pull-ups and see and make sure we can answer this with our head held up high next time. And we expect you to. Who's our accountability partner again? Jeff, you got to come strong and keep us honest. And you have one here on Right Capital. Yeah, we like Right Capital. This is for the extent we don't get into it too much, but yeah, we use it internally as well at McLean Asset Management. We like it, as a general matter.
Though they may also bear the issue of not really getting this tax planning part.
Yeah, I have no idea if they're consumer facing, so I don't want
to. They're not consumer facing, but they don't blend the tax deferred and tax exempt distributions.
Well, truthfully, we have it to the degree that we use that for goals-based planning, but you have to understand, as advisors, and you may be one, I don't know off the top of my head, but these all-in-one solutions generally fall short of the mark, so you end up using specialized programs for specialized answers. Yeah, that's the bottom line.
Right. Covism software is not that comprehensive planning software. It's specifically a tool to do the tax planning. And that's right. Any generalized tool may not really get the precise answer you're looking for. So you do have to tap into other tools as well.
Yeah, and I should have said this earlier. This is because we're new at this game. If there's about 25 people on, if you're still on, or maybe you left the room, but smash that like button. Or subscribe.
Hit like and subscribe to our
hit like and subscribe if you don't mind. It's good for us. We should have said it at the beginning. Damn, we're terrible. But thank you everyone for listening. It's much appreciated, and we'll catch you in the next Q&A session. And remember, Retire with Style. Every Tuesday we release it.
That's right. Thanks everyone.
Take care.